Now, in this video, we're going to take a look at a concept that involves creating a function or defining a function, the code inside of it, but not actually defining any parameters that the function takes. And we're going to use the example of a function that adds two numbers together, and then we're going to look at creating this function without the ability to pass through specifically, say, number 1 and number 2 and add them together, but we're going to allow an almost unlimited, I'm sure there is some limit somewhere, but an unlimited amount of variables without having to define them. So we'll take a look at the problem that we get if we are restricted to defining them, and then we'll take a look at some practical examples. And it's really a good way of doing things if you it's the correct way of doing things if you need to pass a lot of arguments or parameters to a function. So anyway, let's go ahead and take a look at a quick example. So I'm going to go ahead and create a function called add. Now, if you've looked at functions before, you know that you can define which values can be passed to the function. So, for example, num1, comma num2. This means that we can pass number 1 and number 2 to a function. Then we can do something with it inside it, return that value, and then we can use this outside of the function. So let's go ahead and return, or let's create another variable. We don't need to do this, and it's probably bad practice, but just for the sake of clarity, I'll do so. So I'm going to say num1 plus num2. Okay, so total now is equal to whatever we pass here and whatever we pass here. And then we can return this value and then pick this up outside. So for example, I could say echo add 5 and 10, for example, which is obviously 15. Now, I'm echoing because I'm returning it. I'm not outputting anything within the function, which is, again, bad practice. So I'm echoing the result of this function. Let's go ahead and take a look at the result. You see that's 15. So fairly straightforward. Now, what happens if, say, I want to create some kind of calculator application that allows, a user to, I don't know, go ahead and pass in 10 operations, if you like, add operations. Obviously you wouldn't just add in a calculator, but you get my point. So we could say num1, num2, num3, num4, num5. This would only allow the user to enter exactly 5. If we miss out well, let's do it with 3 and we'll see what happens. So if I just pass 5 and 10 and I say plus num3 as well, you'll see that we should return an error. Yep, so we've got missing argument 3 for add called in, and it tells us where it's called and where the function is defined and everything. So we are now faced with a problem where we have to pass. Now we could pass a 0, but then again this is terribly bad practice because we are defining parameters that may not be used. So let's go ahead and take a look at what we can do to get around this. So I'll leave this here. I'll get rid of all of these. I'll get rid of everything in here as well. Now, the way we're going to do is we're not going to define anything in here, but we're going to pick up what's been passed to the function within the function itself. So we want to pick up every value that's passed through. Let's just change this to a 1, so we'll get a result of 16 in the end. So let's go ahead and create our total variable again, but we'll do it this time. We'll set it just to 0, so we've got a standpoint to add on. We're going to increment or append the value, add the value on. We're going to look at two functions, one of which we're going to use in the example and one of which you may use outside of this. The first one is func_getArgs. Now this is a function. What this function does is it returns an array of anything you pass to it. So you may know that we can use the printr statement to show the result of an array. So in this case, if I pass nothing, so I'm going to cut that out of there, go ahead and refresh, you see that we returned an array. So essentially what we're doing is, well, let's get rid of this echo because we don't need that. We are printing the contents of this func_getArgs array, which is nothing, it's an empty array at the moment. Let's go ahead and paste these values back in. So now what we should have is this func_getArgs should return an array with 3 keys, or 3 elements to it. First one's key 0, key 1 and key 2, and then here is the value of everything that we've passed to our function. So now we can be clever, and we're not getting any errors. We haven't defined anything in here, but we're not getting any errors by passing these values. What we can actually do is we can go ahead and we can loop through this func_get_args array, or the array that it returns, and we can add these values onto total and then output the result. So we can actually do this and then pass loads and loads and loads of numbers through to it. So let's go ahead and do this. We're going to use a for each construct, and within here we're just essentially looping through each element of an array. Now we know that func_get_args returns an array, so we can say for each func_get_args, so for every element in that, which is essentially every element or every parameter that you pass through as arg, I'm going to say total equals total plus arg, because remember arg is a number, and we're just passing that through. We could of course just say total plus equals arg. That would just be a shorter way of saying total equals total plus arg, and we also might want to cast this to an int. You wouldn't always want to do this, but we're passing numbers through, so we want to go and make sure these are numbers. Now what we can do is underneath this for each, when that's looped through and added everything we've passed through to it, we can go ahead and return the total. So return total. So now if we go ahead and echo the result of add 5, 10, 1, it will loop through. The first iteration of the loop will, this arg will equal 5, so total plus total equals total plus 5, that would be 5. The second iteration would be 10, so that's 15, and then the third will be 1, which is 16. So now what we'd expect to get is the value 16 returned. So look at that, we can go ahead now and we can pass any number of numbers into this, and it will add all these up for us, and we don't even need to worry about defining them within the function. Now this isn't the most useful example, however there may be circumstances where you are not sure of what data that you want to pass through to a function. For example, let's just say, I'm not going to demonstrate this visually, but let's just say that we have a function that returns fields from a database. Let's say user details from a database. You may want to leave this open so we can pass new values in it, and we don't have to go back to our code and start editing the parameters that we get. Let's just say we need to pass in which fields that we want to return from a user row. We could say pass like this. I'll just quickly demonstrate. We could say pass first name, last name, date of birth, for example, and I could just call this, say, user data. Now user data would then loop through each of these. It would pick this up within a query, so it would put these fields into a query, and then it would go ahead and return that result set. So again, I'm not going to show you because it's beyond the scope of this tutorial, but there's a variety of ways you might need to do this. And of course, you may want to go ahead and you may want to pass a value into here as well. So we're going to take a quick look at func_get_arg as well as func_get_args. So let's go ahead and just get rid of this. And here we'll just say, I don't know, add. In fact, let's say append. No, we'll call the function append, and then we'll call the function. So append. Now I want an initial string, and I want to be able to pass through a value to this, the initial string, and then supply any amount of parameters on here to append to it. So again, useless, but it demonstrates that we can pass one parameter and then an unlimited amount of parameters as well. So I want to append, let's just say I want to append my surname onto my first name. We'll add a space in here, we'll do all that in a minute, but it's just to demonstrate how this can work. So append initial. So what we need to do is we need to let's go ahead and we'll say result equals nothing for now. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take a look first of all at the func_get_arg value. So function, sorry. So I'm going to say func get arg, and I'm going to specify 0. Now this is a function, but it basically takes as the parameter the key of what you're passing. So we can pick out particular values in here. So let's just say we wanted to just return the initial value. I could go ahead and echo append, and I could go ahead and refresh, and you see we just got Alex here. Okay, so notice that PHP hasn't errored because we've passed an extra parameter even though we've defined one. It will only error if you don't pass all of them, all the parameters that are defined in here. So if we were to pass nothing, we'd get that error. Okay, so now let's look at making this work. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say for each, and again for each func get args as arg. This time I'm going to make a slight change and I'm going to say key and arg. So basically I'm grabbing the key, which will be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, blah blah blah, and then the arg, which will be the value. So I could probably call this value, it'd make a bit more sense. So what I can do now is, in fact, just to demonstrate, let me go ahead and echo out key. We've got 0 and 1 because we've passed 2, so this is 0, this is 1. So now what I can do is I can create a quick if statement in here, and I'm going to say if key is greater than or equal to 1, then we want to say result dot equals, so again the same as plus equals, but we're appending this time, so dot equals space, and then we can append on the value. Okay, so we're essentially saying append or the result, sorry, we're saying for any of the keys which are greater than 0, so ignoring this, append this onto the result. Obviously the result needs the initial value on, so at the moment we just have, oops, we're not returning anything. Let's just go ahead and return result. At the moment this will just return a space and then Garrett, you can see, or well, it won't return a space because we've not got anything in front of it. What we need to do is we need to make use of the func get arg function. So what we can say is result initially equals func get arg 0. So we're setting the result initially to the first parameter that we pass, and then for every other parameter we're adding a space and then that parameter. So Alex Garrett, refresh, it now says Alex Garrett. I can then say Alex James Garrett, and it will do exactly the same thing. So it will loop through, ignoring this first pass parameter, and it will just append it on it every time. Now you might be thinking, why is this useful? Well, think about it this way. If you are, say, registering a user in, I don't know, on your website, and you ask them for, you know, an array of names, so you could, or an array of values, or anything, I don't know, it could be different keywords for, say, a video upload, say tags for a video upload, anything like that that's separated out. Of course we could use things like explode, but depending on how you're adding them, if you're using different fields, you could, you know, append things together, or, well, you wouldn't, but this is essentially an example, but I think it's quite a good example to show you how to use the func get args, blah blah blah, this for each if you're new to this, and skipping over this first result. Anyway, that is how we pass parameters that we don't define in PHP. It's an extremely useful technique which saves you a lot of time and also application speed as well.